Adventure and dual sport riding is fun, but you know what isn't fun? Dying in the middle of nowhere because you were woefully unprepared for adventure riding. Let's talk about how we can keep that from happening. So maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there are very real dangers and potential disasters that can occur when you're adventure and dual sport riding. And so I want to talk about 5 more mistakes that I see dual sport and adventure riders making, all of which sort of pertain to like group riding and not ending up stranded and unprepared in the middle of nowhere. If you haven't yet, check out the first video, 7 mistakes new adventure riders make. But today we're going to talk about 5 more mistakes that new dual sport and adventure riders make. So the first biggest mistake that I see a lot of dual sport and adventure riders making, and this one blows my mind because it seems so simple and so obvious, but bring water. You should always have water with you, no matter what the temperature outside is. If you're going into the backcountry, if you're not just like going to the store and back, you should be carrying water on you. And not just a little bit, enough to get you through the day, but also to have a little margin for error in case something bad happens. I cannot tell you how many people I have seen show up to rides with no water whatsoever. You don't have to go out and buy the world's fanciest hydration pack. A bottle of water in your tank bag or your backpack or whatever is fine. Adventure and dual sport motorcycle riding is difficult. You're gonna sweat, you're exerting yourself, and you should be drinking water as much as possible. It really helps to have that water easily accessible when you're riding. That's why I wear a hydration pack all the time. But if that's not the case, then you need to stop from time to time, pull that water out and drink it. Whether you're thirsty or not, whether you feel like you're slowing your group down or not, whatever it is, stay hydrated. I've seen firsthand the dangers of not staying hydrated enough or overexerting yourself in super hot temperatures recently. Now, this isn't about Trav's incident specifically, but it was something that reminded me to caution all of you to make sure that you carry water and other things to consider, particularly when it's hot out. Gear color matters, so lighter colored gear is going to be more comfortable. It's going to be less hot. I like to take electrolyte pills when it's super hot, try to take one before I go and then another one partway through the day if I feel like I need it, just to keep my muscles from cramping up and stay hydrated. But regardless of whether or not you're riding in the dead of winter, you should have water on you for your own sake and for everyone else's sake who will have to take care of you if you don't. Speaking of taking care of yourself, that brings me to mistake number 2 that I see a lot of dual sport and ADV riders making, and that is not being self-sufficient. Admittedly, when you first start riding, you don't know everything there is to know. You don't know what you don't know, which is probably why you're watching videos like this, but you should probably at minimum have some idea of how to deal with the most common issues that can occur on a motorcycle ride. It's important to have a tire changing kit or make sure that somebody with you has a tire changing kit. With a tire changing kit, changing a tire is a 15 to 60 minute inconvenience. Without it, it's a day ender and a huge pain in the ass because we got to figure out a way to get your flat tire bike out of wherever it is that you're riding. Have a tire changing kit. Have a way to communicate. Bring a GPS or some kind of navigation device, your phone at the very least. Download the map. No matter what app you're using, you can download maps offline in Google Maps and Gaia, in Onyx, so that you have it in case you end up in a place without cell phone service, which we often do. Think about what would happen, even if you're going out with a group, if you end up separated from that group and had a problem. Are you prepared to deal with it? And if you're not, you may want to think about either doing some research and figuring out what you need to be self-sufficient, learning to be self-sufficient, or at least verifying that other people in your group have the tools and equipment that you'll need if something were to happen. That's not to say that people don't help each other. We absolutely do. And if someone has an issue on a ride, everyone's going to jump in to help. I've seen it firsthand multiple times in multiple countries, in fact, but people get separated. Incidents happen when you're out on your own. It happens to everybody at some point, and so it's important to know that you have what you need to take care of yourself should the need to do so arise, and hopefully it never does. Number 3, and this is maybe more of a group ride specific mistake that I see new riders making, when you have the opportunity, and you don't always have the opportunity, to know where you're going to be riding with this group ahead of time. Whether that is the specific route or even just downloading the map of the area, like I said. As an example, the Dork in the Road ride, I told everyone we're going to ride the Oregon BDR. We're going to do section 4 one day, section 5 the other day. And almost everyone who showed up had downloaded those tracks to their devices and had them ready to go on their bikes, even though the plan was to go out in a big group, or really we split up into a bunch of smaller groups because it's safer and easier to keep track of people. One mistake that I see new riders make is just showing up and not knowing where they're going and not having any way to access the track itself. It's really advantageous for everyone to have the track because, one, you don't feel like you have to stop all the time and just make sure that people are still going the same way. Obviously, you need to stop and make sure people are doing okay. We'll cover that in one of the later ones. If you know everyone else has the track, it's a little bit easier to make a lot better pace because because nobody's going to accidentally go veering off on the wrong turn. So the whole group can move faster and more efficiently. It also makes it easier if someone does get separated to go back and try to find them, because we know that you're on the route. At least we hope that you are. And just for your planning purposes, it sure is nice to know what you're getting yourself into, how long the route's going to be. It's not out of the question to show up and ask these questions, find out what the terrain and the route's going to be like. In general, whenever possible, it's part of being self-sufficient. You should have the route and some way to navigate it on your own if you're going out in a group. Sometimes there's a person who's leading a guided ride, and this isn't an opportunity. I'm not saying that that's wrong or bad. You have to approach things a little differently, but when you have the opportunity, you should show up prepared with the route and a way to navigate it, whether that's your phone or a GPS device or something else, so that you are self-sufficient, kind of going back to item number 2. Fourth mistake I see new adventure and dual sport riders make is group specific, and that is not following ADV off-road dual sport riding group etiquette, or at least the rules, the safety precautions that we all take. And part of that is ignorance, which is why I'm making this video. I'm not saying that if you show up and break a rule that you didn't know existed, that's your fault. It isn't necessarily, although it is possible to research these things ahead of time. So let me tell you the biggest mistakes I see people making, the biggest things I see newer riders do in these group rides that lead to problems. And a lot of new riders are going to go out on group rides. They're not going to have the confidence to go out on their own, so it helps to be prepared to ride in groups. Here's some things to know before you do that. One, we don't ride right behind each other. We always ride in a staggered formation. The exception to this is when taking tight corners on the highway. The group tends to get into single file at that point, but you stagger, so one person on the right side of the lane, one person on the left side of the lane, back and forth, so that there's no one directly in front of you. It gives you more time to react, makes it less likely that you're going to rear end somebody. If the person in front of you has to make a quick adjustment or whatever, they have room to get over into the other side of the lane, and you're leaving adequate space. So we ride in a staggered formation on and off road, although we still ride right. There's a trade-off there off road in particular, because you don't want to be taking corners in the left-hand channel. You do want to stay not directly behind the person in front of you, regardless of the terrain you're riding in. We maintain a safe distance when we're riding off-road. Do not ride directly behind someone. That safe distance will increase depending on the conditions. If it's super dusty, you're gonna wanna hang way back so that the dust can settle and you can actually see the terrain in front of you that you're trying to navigate. If you don't, an unexpected rock or rut or obstacle could take you off your bike and you'll never even know what happened. I've seen it happen, it's happened to me, so maintain a safe distance to give yourself room to maneuver if the person in front of you has a problem, but also so that you can actually see what's going on depending on the conditions. Don't pass people. This one should go without saying, but nobody's expecting to be passed on the gravel road when you're riding in a group in staggered formation. That's not a thing people do. So unless it's an emergency, you're an exceptionally gifted rider with a really good reason, you should not be passing people at all. Maybe you're trying to catch up to the group leader to tell him something, okay, maybe in those situations, but you need to be really confident and capable and sensitive to what the person in front of you is doing, because they're not expecting to be passed and they could dart over at any time dealing with an obstacle to avoid a rock, whatever it is, and you don't want to cause a pileup. You don't want to be that person. So don't be passing people just because it's fun or because you think they're going too slow or whatever. You sign up for the group ride, take the ride, slow down, take in the scenery and enjoy yourself. You don't need to be passing. We wait at intersections when we ride together in groups. This one's super important, and it actually ties into the next one, which is you're responsible for the person behind you. At intersections, and I don't mean every single intersection. So if you're staying on a road and you're not leaving the road that you're on, and you know that everybody has the track, then you can ride right through an intersection. It's only when you're making turns. So when you change the route, when you do a turn off onto a different road, whatever like that, whereas somebody who wasn't paying attention might end up going forward, your job is to stop and wait for the person behind you to see you and hopefully indicate that they've seen you in some way with a wave or a headlight flash or whatever. But at the very least, make sure they can see where you are and where you're going so that they don't just ride right past and the group gets separated. This sounds so simple. I have explained it so many times, and every ride I go on, someone blows it. Every ride I go on, we end up separated, we end up losing people, because this idea that you're responsible for the person behind you just doesn't click in people's heads. Not only at intersections are you responsible for the person behind you, but in general. You should make sure, no matter how much faster you're riding than the person behind you, that you slow down, that you look in your rearview mirror, that you make sure that you see that person from time to time. Because if you don't, they could be back there dealing with a flat tire by themselves, or worse, pinned underneath their motorcycle or hurt, and you want to get back there as fast as possible. So even the best riders you know, even when I ride with Tim, I stop and make sure that I see him every 10 or 15 minutes. I stop at intersections to make sure that he sees me turn, even though I know he has the route, even though I know he's self-sufficient, even though I know he could navigate and deal with just about anything that comes his way because he's a better rider than me, I still stop and make sure that we're together, because Shit happens. Bad things happen to the best riders, and you need to make sure that you're taken care of and making sure that you can see the person behind you. But Dork, how does that keep the group together? Because everyone's doing it. So the leader is taking care of the person behind them, the second person is looking at the person behind them, so that if you're fifth and the person that's sixth crashes or something and you go back for them, well, pretty soon the fourth person's gonna notice you're not there and go back. And then the third person's gonna notice the fourth person, and so on. And eventually the whole group will have turned around and gone back together. If one person is just riding their own ride and not even thinking about the person behind them, that's bad. And the whole group can get separated, and somebody can not have the tools or communication or expertise that they need. So it's important to take care of the person behind you, stop at intersections, and make sure that you see them from time to time when riding in a group. And the number 5 mistake that I see new riders on ADV or dual sport motorcycles making, particularly in groups, but also in general, is not riding their own ride. It's really easy, particularly as a new rider, to get in with a group that is better or faster or more skilled or more confident than you. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. Riding behind somebody faster and better than you is a great way to learn what's possible, is a great way to build your skills, is a great way to stretch your comfort zone. It really helps when that person is aware of your skill level and isn't going to push it too hard. But at the same time, you should not be trying so hard to keep up with the person in front of you that you're pushing way outside your comfort zone, that you're doing things you're not comfortable with, that you're doing things you're not confident you can accomplish. And that is such a big factor. I have a whole video on how important confidence is to off-road riding, which I can link for you. It's the most important skill in my opinion. But if you're not 100% confident you can handle an obstacle or a hill climb or a section of road, if you can't envision yourself succeeding at all, then you probably shouldn't attempt it, because that is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's really easy to just give up halfway through because you decided you couldn't do it from the beginning. It's important to be confident when tackling things that are outside your comfort zone. So when you're with a group of people who are better than you or faster than you, do not let them push you outside your comfort zone. If you need to slow down, slow down. Don't worry about holding the group up, because you know what holds the group up even longer is when you fall down, hurt yourself, break something else. And nobody wants to see that. Nobody in these adventure and dual sport groups, I can't speak to some of the other segments, but in general, adventure and dual sport people are very community minded and they want to help each other. And it takes a lot to annoy someone to the point where they don't want to help you anymore. And usually that thing is like you were willfully unprepared or arrogant or just doing stupid things. If you just make like regular mistakes and things happen, everyone's ready to jump in and help you. I've seen it 100 times. So don't stress about being that person that holds the group up. Instead, ride your own ride, take care of yourself, and make sure that you are not putting yourself in danger and putting others in danger by putting yourself in danger. It's okay to ask questions before you go out on the ride. If you're not getting the route ahead of time, this all kind of goes back to everything else I've said. So ideally, you show up to a group ride prepared to be self-sufficient, armed with the knowledge of where you're going to be riding, fully hydrated and carrying water. But if the group leader or whomever is organizing it doesn't send you a route ahead of time, or if it's just not determined, it's okay to ask, how hard is what we're doing? What do the obstacles look like? Are we going to hit any single track? I did this exact thing at that Alpine Stars event in Big Bear because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do the dual sport route, because I heard there was some tight single track and some other tough stuff, and I ended up doing it, and it was exactly as was described to me when I asked. So the other thing to keep in mind, this is maybe 5A, it's not a mistake, but it is kind of a mistake, is not leaving when things aren't the way they should be. If you're self-sufficient, if you have navigation, you have tools to take care of yourself, plenty of hydration, and it's clear to you that what's going on is outside your skill level, you're in over your head, it's okay to be like, you know what, I'm gonna head back to camp, or I'm gonna go out and do this easier route, or I'm gonna head back to the highway. That's okay. Nobody wants to push someone beyond their comfort zone. No one wants to make someone risk themselves or their machine in a way that they're not comfortable with just to keep the group together. And so it is perfectly acceptable to bow out if and when you find yourself in over your head. Hopefully with your navigation you can find an easy way to get out. Sometimes somebody will offer to ride back with you or ride out with you to guide you if you're not familiar with the area. But it's okay to say, this is not where I'm at right now. I'm a little over my head and I think I'm not gonna tackle this. That's okay. It's okay to bow out. It really is, I promise. It won't feel like it in the moment, but it 100% is. Man, I talk a lot. So that is 5 more mistakes that I see new ADV and dual sport riders making. And I hope that helps you, particularly if you're going out and doing some kind of adventure group ride or just riding with some friends or whatever. It sure helps to be prepared, be hydrated, know the rules and the etiquette, and not be afraid to bail out when you need to. So if you have any questions, you want to add any mistakes that you see people making, or maybe I'm totally wrong and you disagree with me and being prepared and hydrated is stupid, well, let me know in the comments. I just want to say thank you for watching, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Oh, thank you.
Excellent!